Zach from Gravel Bike California, here in Colusa County, getting ready for the Smackdown that is the Grasshopper Series Huffmaster. In California, we tend to think that February is already spring, even though we're still fighting off the effects of winter. Last year's event was, I guess, a mud fest, kind of similar to riding through a Wendy's Frosty. But Mig and his crew's gone out there and really made this in real great condition. As for me, I'm out here for the views because there's plenty of sights to see. Let's roll. That was a teaser. Should mention that before I faded out. When you're talking series, the Grasshopper is the only one that includes gravel in the state, with Low Gap serving as opening day in January, but flips over the coast in February for Huffmaster, starting out of Maxwell in Colusa County, with the county seat of the same name serving since its inception, including a total of 20,000 living within this region. Huffmaster festivities began Friday night in Williams, meeting at Granzella's for packet pickup to grab your race number and extras, and dawdle around asking questions on course conditions, but also to grab your last bite before Huffmaster, with offerings that looked like exotic game was on the menu, including accomplished gravel racers, as Luis and I try getting some last-minute dirt from Mig. This 89-mile loop held a slightly paved majority, but with mainly smooth dirt and under 4K of climbing, this course runs even faster than you'd expect. With only a population of 1,200, the Huffmaster seemed to take over Maxwell. Running into so many friends, you felt like a local as the pro fields assembled for their 9 a.m. start, with Mig handing out instructions like the Beatles' final concert, leading them out as the first of 5 waves, as mine was the largest one, choosing to go under 40 with my Terravelle Rutland 38s and testing out the Spinergy GXXs for my first race. Packed in and rolling out like a school of fish, happy everyone moved ahead in an orderly fashion, as it was hard to get a sense of how many people were in front, and I couldn't analyze the numbers from this angle until later, but I get a greater sense looking around our first turn at 1.5 miles, sensing we were pretty strung out, as we weren't getting a different perspective for the next 7.5 miles, especially sharing with Joe the inability to rubberneck from injuries, with anxiety levels rising, coming up on our first dirt sector, changing the complexion of the ride, creating a gravel jam, navigating our initial encounter with mud, with Mark from the Forest Ranch ride, one of the early casualties, leaving space to roam across the road after the bottleneck, to veer back and forth to best handle the mud, seeing a lot of timidness going through, as the more speed, the better, that came with a higher heart rate too, unable to vanquish Sally's smile on wheels, as the next curve revealed I had to play catch up, putting the gas on the smoothness, then trying to power through the mud, while continually cleaning my camera, ending our off-roading right after mile 10, with why do I even bother? The good news was, I had a collection of other stranded souls with me, forming a pace line to see if we could fill the gap, kicking up mud into my camera and other people's faces, as this was a case of teamwork making the dream work, eventually easing into Grupo Compacto, and after an opportunity to do some more housekeeping, I could feel the quiet nervousness, knowing everyone wanted to better position themselves. And like in crits, I expected the heat to go up after the turn at mile 18, with aggressiveness being picked up without a center line, that didn't pair well with this rider handling his mechanical improperly trying to exit the pack, So in this fury, I opted for gravel to move up in the group, firmly positioned in the middle on our transition onto dirt, but the next curve would disrupt the whole order, with everyone scrambling across the road for good reason, needing to stay on point to avoid the number of potholes thrown at us. And after the last turn, closing out our third gravel sector, I felt like I was still in pretty good position in the peloton as the race to contract repeated itself again, just in time before turning onto Highway 162, feeling tighter than ever before and easing into a nice comfortable conversation pace, with this racetrack causing some rubbernecking as we started making our way into the foothills. After mile 27, we turned back onto rural roads, not feeling much urgency, knowing we were 12 miles away from dirt and climbing, and though these dozen averaged under 1%, the short hill did press the gas a bit, but also your clarity of groups, passing riders from earlier waves, and when I came up on the younger Crawford, I thought it would be good filmmaking to add a close-up. Then realizing too late that the group had taken off, and not knowing there wasn't a big contingent behind, meant I had to take the initiative to play chase, but I had the ability of stitching with oven mitts to close that gap, with not a lot of options to problem solve, as I could let up and hope there was another group caught in a bottleneck behind, or keep pressing in case the peloton fractured or eased up. And when I lost my final partner in crime, it started a stretch of 15 minutes where I had no encounters with people, let alone cyclists. But glass half full, it gave me time to appreciate where I was riding, reminding me of one of my favorite rides last year, with the greenness and waterways matching the beauty of Everyone Loves Raymond in the foothills of the Sierra. But I was starting to develop a Stockholm syndrome with myself, that I was glad to finally make some human contact, as it appeared I'd be hanging with other species soon, with the dirt starting a new chapter that may not be kind to all. The toughest climb of the day could be considered tame in other standards, averaging 6.5% for a little over 2.25 miles, allowing for a pretty steady pace, except for one break in consistency, trying to find the best line over this brief mud pocket. But about 2/3 of the way up, I noticed my E-shifting went out in the steepest part of the climb, locking me into a 1-to-1 gear ratio. That wasn't as big of a problem for the rest of the ascent, as I almost dreaded reaching the top, taking a while to gain some downhill momentum, but eventually was able to gain enough speed to go by too quickly to tell the Stanford rider that we have the axe, as you don't want to miss the snow-capped mountains in the Mendocino forest, nor finding the ruts of dried mud on the turn, that even though I avoided the bumpiness, I was reaching my limits of velocity, as it's a strange feeling to want to spin your legs, but not being able to do much about it, as that would change slightly hitting the valley floor, revolving my cranks faster than a blender, but with little results, knowing that I couldn't complete the ride under these circumstances, where I could probably skateboard faster than biking, with my only hope finding a spare at the aid station, asking everyone around for help.
Do you have an extra SRAM battery?
Oh no.
Luckily, the mechanics from Trailhouse Santa Rosa were properly stocked to get me going, while our Forest Ranch reunion wasn't going so well with Ian taking a spill on the downhill, so it was hard finding the proper mindset heading out for the second half of the ride, with some interesting flatness beginning alongside this creek that was dispensing water more like a river, followed by the next 7 miles of dirt that trended overall slightly up, with a few heavier pitches along the way, the ones you could spin through rather than grind. But the two flattest miles might have been the most impactful, as it would just make sense puddles and mud would collect here. As part of the allure that I live in Southern California is not to ride in wet dirt. Yet, I wasn't left with other options today, and seeing others dealing with the consequences made me change my mindset that the mud was an anomaly and just power through it. Happy to make the final mile of the climb, where you were highly exposed and the 4% grade was steady, yielding a new picturesque angle on the valley below that we'd soon dip into after the peak, turning right onto Sites Ladoga Road, with an intriguing development to the left I'll soon drown you with, as the next 5 miles were downhill, with the steeper beginning giving me a second wind, and I don't know if most were riding too fast to notice the presence of headhunters abound, who must have been handy at stealing car parts too. But Mark and I formed a good tandem, taking pulls, while the other could focus on identifying livestock. And it was good to know there were options if we were stranded. Adding Ian to the mix would definitely help, although there wasn't much he could do to clean my cameras, as the water added a feeling of refreshment, with 19th century hints to the right of the road that used to house a giant resort no longer with us, as our focus remained to keep on pushing, even though we were down to 2, with our eyes on the prize to catch the group ahead, just in time to hit the dirt, saying hi to Louise for the first time since yesterday. But I felt strong enough to take a pull, and maybe too eager, creating separation, as once again I was solo, not doing a great job making friends, but I was appreciating these surroundings, with this dirt sector ending before mile 66, taking us through the footprints of Leesville, dating back to about 150 years ago. But it didn't take that long for our next phase, fronted by our final pit stop, whose biggest fault was making me stay longer, as there were plenty of excuses for enjoyment, with our final climb under the ride's namesake just beyond. Huffmaster Road may punch above its weight, averaging a significant 6.5%, where you seem to gain elevation fast, as the distance is deceptive with all the switchbacks, because this ascent is only 2/3 of a mile. But what's great is on the descent Huffmaster gives so much more, with 5 miles of downhill delight, where I didn't have too much of an issue with the dried out bumpiness, nor the occasional mud on tight curves. As with the speed, I hope most were able to take in the eye candy, because it was too easy to get hooked into the ride. But reaching the bottom brought in a couple of plot lines. The first, avoiding this medley crevasse.
You all good? Ooh, did you hit that spot there? Oh boy.
The other story was enjoying the last 6 miles of the stir sector for one of the last times, as the Huffmaster course encircles the soon-to-be constructed Sites Reservoir that will consume this area of the route, but there will be improvements like a bridge to maintain the short course and a new dirt road on the south that looks to make the long a little shorter. So with these circumstances, you view this all under a different lens, knowing you're riding through a place that will no longer exist, with even these creeks being a drop in the bucket, thinking about all the volume as this valley expands. And because this section is basically flat, these final experiences may go by too quickly, with a goodbye to the enclave of sights, funneling through the last 9 miles, soon exiting the foothills of the foothills to the familiarity of farmland, turning off of Maxwell Sites Road for our final dirt sector, where the elevation profile mimics the y-axis, as this was as close to a Midwest gravel event as I'll get, feeling like I finished in respectable time under the circumstances, with next year's preparations starting now. Although maybe we should clean up a little first. Rolling back into Maxwell for post-ride activities as the cool down seemed already well along its way, with a lot of eating options abound, leaning to the local fare. Glad that at least one Zach made the podium, finishing off with friends and another grasshopper checking all the boxes. Wow, what a rocket of a day. I mean, low gap just feels like a sprint. This is the same, but twice as many miles. Still, you just had to keep your head up, look around, because the greenness was so gorgeous today. I love the whole experience, and I definitely want to come back, rubberneck a little bit more, and great course, hand it to Nick and the whole crew. Excellent ride. And if you want to support us, hit the subscribe button, go to our shop, or support us also on Patreon, so we can bring you more in the state of dirt.